Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to GarbAugust. Dare I say GarbAugust 2022? Which raises the horrifying prospect that GarbAugust will continue from year to year and might have 2023, 2024. How much garbage can we stand? For those of you who maybe don't watch any BookTube channel other than my own, I actually cannot fault such flawless taste, but if that's true, you might not know that GarbAugust is an August-long event created by Ollie at Criminale, designed to celebrate his beloved trash, to celebrate books that are horrible, that are trash. I am one of the co-hosts. I was overjoyed to be asked. I have read an enormous number of books in my life, and a large percentage of them have been trash. And there's trash and there's trash, right? There's trash that can't be enjoyed for any number of reasons. It Came from the Page just did a video in which his own inaugural GarbAugust reading went horribly because he encountered garbage books that aren't innocent, sweet fun. There's plenty of garbage that is. There's plenty of garbage that can be read for fun. It doesn't do any harm at all, or minimal harm. There's plenty of garbage that isn't. Like, for instance, in my own professional line as a critic, almost every day I read a book that is garbage in a bad way, garbage in a way that's going to win a Booker Prize, and influence people to think that it's good, that it's not garbage at all. There's a great deal of garbage in the literary world that hides the fact that it's garbage, or has that fact hidden from it by its adherents on social media. So not all garbage is made the same. We are looking in GarbAugust to celebrate the good kind of garbage. And again, I can't help but picture that somewhere Jordan Parsons is watching this and saying, how can there be a good kind of garbage? I don't understand. How can there be a good kind of garbage? But we who know. And I was not run out of town with torches and pitchforks yesterday for floating the mere possibility that Robert E. Howard might be garbage. That's good. That shows a forbearance on the part of my co-host, or maybe they very wisely don't watch my videos. But I have continued. I am going to read garbage all month long at an industrious level. And I wanted to get to my GarbAugust book for today. I finished it, and this is the first time that I've read the whole thing. I've read stories, but I've never read the whole of this book. And it's Brak the Barbarian by John Jakes, which I just recently found at the Brattle. I found this in May at the Brattle Bookshop. And this came out in 1968. And it's the story of a Conan-esque barbarian. I don't think the cover here, it says, fantastic adventure in the age of blood, into the thrice-fired hell of Yob-Haggoth strode, yellow-haired warrior of the north. That's Brak. The cover doesn't say in the tradition of Conan. They usually do, but nevertheless, it is very much in the tradition of Conan. There are a few variations here. Brak the Barbarian isn't quite the rabble-rouser that Conan is. You get the sense that he would mostly like to be left alone. Every once in a while, in a Conan story or in a lot of Conan pastiche novels, the author will try to give you that impression with Conan as well. But as we saw yesterday, Conan is ready to cause trouble. He's ready to kill people. So it's no surprise that trouble keeps finding him. And he goes looking for it as well, because he's a freebooter, a reaver, a slayer, a thief. Brak, you don't get the impression that he would do that. That he would probably earn his coin for meal and ale by beating people at arm wrestling in the market square and not think anything of adventuring. But he does have a goal in mind. That one difference between him and Conan is that he seems a little bit more laid back, if a blood-soaked barbarian can ever be laid back. And another difference is physical. Brak has long blonde hair that he keeps in a braid. Conan is raven-haired, and he doesn't keep it very long. And he shouldn't keep it very long, because it's a very bad disadvantage in a fight against another man. And Brak has one other element that's kind of charming, I guess. It isn't charming in the sense of substituting for a personality, which he very much does not have, but it will do to differentiate him at least a little from other mighty thewed barbarians, which is that he has a kind of a dream. Conan doesn't really dream of anything other than a willing wench and a bunch of mead and some coin. But Brak has a dream about, he comes from the north, like Conan does, and he has a dream of a wonderful southern kingdom where all is mild and the air is sweet and the sunsets last forever and everyone's calm and quiet and accepting. Maybe there's a glint of blue sea and a nice, refreshing breeze. And that dream is always before Brak's eyes, no matter what pestilential hellhole he has wandered into in one adventure or another. That dream of a southern kingdom, that's what makes him wander. That's what prevents him from putting down stakes, is that he's trying to get to that southern kingdom. And you might be asking at this point, okay, and no, there's nothing more than that. There's nothing more than that. That's it. That's as far as we get with a personality for Brak the Barbarian. That is our Barbarian there. And this is a great old paperback. It's got, we at GarbAugust, our unruly crowd of hosts, we are constantly trying to zero in. Not everybody, I should say. I am mostly trying to zero in on what actually is garbage. Does it have outward signs that you can tell? Can you name something as garbage before you've read a single word of it? And we have been having a great deal of fun. You've seen some of it on all these videos where we've been talking about what some of those things are. I would argue that discolored pages like that are a very, very good sign. If you have an old paperback that has green or red or pages like that, that's a very good indicator that it might be garbage. Another thing is the inset. Now, this is not for cigarettes. This is not a cigarette ad. This is instead an ad for the Science Fiction Book Club, where you get their foundation volume, which is probably very collectible now. You can get it for $10 at the time, and you sign up like a book club for other books that get sent to you regularly. But that original Science Fiction Book Club edition of the Foundation trilogy with a mint condition dust jacket, probably very collectible. I don't think a lot of kids who signed up for this kept it in mint condition, but nevertheless, if the book has a cardboard inset like this, I remember these. I remember this one in particular, and I remember thinking back in 1968 that $10 is too rich for my blood. I can buy these things for 75 cents at the spinner rack at Tro's dry goods store. I'm not going to spend a lot of money to belong to some fancy schmancy book club. I eventually changed my thinking on that, but not fast enough. How I wish that I had signed up for the Science Fiction Book Club as soon as I saw it. Is that actually what this is? Is that what this is? Or is this just an ad for the Foundation trilogy? It might be just that. Just a subscription to the Foundation trilogy. This valuable certificate brings you the Foundation trilogy. Yeah, this isn't the Science Fiction Book Club. This is just for the Foundation. Okay, great. But they did have these insets, and that is, for the Science Fiction Book Club, I mean, and that is that another characteristic of garbage? That it has an advertising inset in the middle? I don't know. Could be. Definitely in this case, it is. Now, if you know John Jakes as an author, I want to say that John Jakes is dead. If he's not, he must be 120 years old. But every time I categorically say that an author is dead, you all pipe up in the comments field and say, no, they're still alive. And every time I say they're still alive, one of you pops up in the comments field and said, they died in 1982 or something like that. I never get that right. But John Jakes must be in the ripe richness of his age if he is still alive. And if you know his name, you will know it not from Brak the Barbarian, unless you're a GarbAugust host, but rather from The Bastard. He did a historical novel for America's Bicentennial called The Bastard, the #1, the first volume in the Kent Family Chronicles. Classic historical fiction where he invents a family, the Charbonneau family, that will follow the events of history. They will be entwined with the events of history, but they themselves are invented. And The Bastard sold like griddle cakes. Everyone loved it. Everyone read that book. Good Lord, I couldn't hear about it enough from bookish fans. Oh, you like books? You must have read The Bastard, right? And then it was made into a TV series with a very young Andrew Stevens, who was astonishingly beautiful, and Tom Bosley as Benjamin Franklin. What more do you need than that? It's just that the miniseries made the book sell even more by a factor of 10. The publisher, I forget who was the publisher of it, but the publisher had an original sketch cover for The Bastard, and they decided very cannily for the paperback rights to the miniseries, to reprint the book in lieu of the success of the miniseries. They decided very cannily to redo the cover as a sketch. They didn't plop a photo, an out-of-focus photo from the miniseries on the cover. Instead, they redid the original sketch so that the man's, Philippe Charbonneau's face on the cover suddenly looked like Andrew Stevens. Very canny decision. And the book sold like crazy. It just flew out of bookstores. There were many, many sequels. It was the making of John Jakes' fortune. There were box sets. There were sequels to the Bastard miniseries. If you know John Jakes as a name, you will know him from that, almost certainly. But he loved science fiction and fantasy, especially what came to be known as sword and sorcery fantasy. He loved this sort of stuff. He loved it, and one of the sure ways that you can know that he did is that he was happy to lampoon it. I'm not 100% sure that Brak the Barbarian isn't just a lampooning of sword and sorcery. I'm not 100% sure that there's anything sincere in here, except for a note that John Jakes left on this book that I will read to you that might be a token that this was sincere. But he also wrote a great pastiche novel of a great send-up satire of sword and sorcery fantasy called Mention My Name in Atlantis, which you really should read if you haven't read. And this novel is the story of Brak just getting into one adventure after another. And the paperback held up really well to read. These things were hammered together. And in light of yesterday's dramatic reading, I want to give you one today. I want to give you a dramatic reading today from, keep in mind, this is in the middle of the book. Most of the action has already happened here. Let's read a little and see what we can make of Brak the Barbarian. When the big barbarian opened his eyes, he thought he had gone mad. Moments passed while the wind keened. He fought back the blinding ache from a great red sun searing its light into his face, and only then did Brak recall that this was not madness. Rather, it was the product of madness, of sand and of wind. Was it a day ago? A century? Gradually the memories returned. Brak had ridden down from the mountain pass into the land of Copt, and thence southward. For the better part of several weeks he had loafed along through this pleasant kingdom and that. At length he reached a border marker, crossed it into a land that gradually changed into arid foothills and to sandy waste. At an oasis where caravan trails to the south intersected, he had been warned that the shortest route to Kurdistan, which is the southern kingdom that he is dreaming of reaching, Kurdistan is his nirvana, was not necessarily the safest. And if he followed a direct route but little used caravan trail, he was told, he would find himself in a red sand waste where the breath of the gods often blotted the skies and earth was impenetrable storm clouds of sand. Brak had struck out on the lonely trail nevertheless, so he gets expert advice from people who know the land and ignores them. Brak had struck out on the lonely trail nevertheless, and then the storm had struck, a whistling, gritty fury out of the west. He lost the trail completely. Now the siege was over, and Brak woke from hours of slumber. He remembered collapsing with exhaustion just as the hot wind was beginning to blow itself out, and at least he could be thankful he was alive. So he's wandering down a trail he doesn't know. He sees a massive storm come out of the west. It starts to get really bad, and he decides to take a nap. And lives. Okay. Blinking into the reddest sundown, Brak felt for his broadsword. He discovered it hanging at his hip. He rolled over. Trackless wastes stretched away. The wind lifted the sand in isolated veils here and there. He saw his pony where it had fallen, jaws, eyes, and ears so coated and filled that they looked like parts of some grotesque sand sculpture. At the height of the storm, while the heavens blackened, the pony had broken its leg. The poor dying beast had saved Brak's life, offering him a shelter until the worst of the storm had passed on. Brak's tongue was parched. He crawled toward the animal. He laid his palm against the pony's flank, uttered a guttural word of sorrow. At least he had been spared slaying the strong little beast. Squatting on his haunches, Brak considered his predicament. He was in utter isolation. He had no provender, no water, and no real knowledge of where he was, except that he was lost in the middle of a vast desert. The warnings of the hook-nosed loafers back on the oasis he recalled now with bitter clarity. He recalls their warnings. He also recalls that they have hook noses. Only men with feel of the sand in their bones, only nomads born to this part of the world attempted to cross this desert, and even they crossed at a relatively safe corner of the waste, and they told him this before he struck out on his own. The waste, said the men of the oasis, was fearful. Once it had bloomed green and fertile ages ago, but now it was cursed, dry and empty, and haunted. Of course. Rising, stretching, the ache from his mighty body, Brak shouted, "Hello? Hello? Hello? Hello!" The emptiness thundered back. The wind, piping, carried the grace notes weirdly. Low, 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 low. Brak walked to the top of a dune, calf-deep in sand. That's not how dunes work. At the top, he shouted again. This time, the cry had a different, distorted sound. A moment later, he saw why. Something had interrupted the emptiness. He gaped in wonder. At the oasis, he muttered to himself, they talked of this place. I remember. I thought they were ignorant sots mouthing cradle tales. It had a name, I recall. Then, like 1,000 great gongs, the word came into his head before the word touched his tongue. Chambalor. What did they call it? Chambalor, the city of gold chariots. Brak's face was pained. Well, it's a fine burial place, anyway. So he's got a dead pony that's covered in sand. He's in the middle of nowhere with no provender, and he sees a city in the distance that he has been told about by people who know the terrain. So he might as well go there. And that, keep in mind, is on page 105 of a 200-page book, which gives you some idea of what this is like. It's one damn thing after another. It's just Brak encountering one problem after another. I have to say, in the course of the book, most of the problems he encounters are self-inflicted. Most of the problems that he encounters, like this one, are problems that he could have avoided if he had simply taken the wise advice of everyone who's telling him not to do what he's about to do. I guess there wouldn't be much of an adventure in that either, though. Although, if you're going to say that there wouldn't be much of an adventure in it if Brak took the advice that's always offered to him, well, then why make him easygoing? Why not make him contrary so that it's natural that he would be ignoring sage advice? I don't know the answer to that. I wish that this book were more enjoyable. I think it has sequels. I don't plan on reading any more adventures by Brak. This was enough for me. Although, I have to say, like I mentioned, there's a note at the beginning of this, and I have to say, the note really did it for me. The note really made me feel affection for the book after the fact. I didn't read the note until I finished with the book. I would probably have read it with a warm, affectionate smile on my face throughout if I'd read the note first. First is an epigraph, a poem, a snatch of a poem by Conan Doyle. I have wrought my simple plan, if I give 1 hour of joy to the boy who's half a man, or the man who's half a boy. But this is the author's note, which he wrote, he dates it Brighton, New York, Kettering, Ohio, 1961 to 1967. It's 7 paragraphs long. So it didn't take him 6 years to write this, but I think he probably wrote it once and then rewrote it for the purposes of this book. And this is the prefatory note that John Jakes writes. When the first Brak tale saw print, its appearance was followed shortly by a letter to the magazine that had published it. I've lost my copy of the letter since, but I recall its inferences quite clearly, and painful ones they were for an author. The reader's letter expressed the opinion that Brak was but a pale ghost of mighty Conan, and what was worse, had probably been conceived either out of ignorance of Conan, or with full knowledge and therefore out of sheer cupidity. To the first part of the charge, I plead delightedly guilty. That teller of marvelous tales, Robert Howard, did indeed create a giant in whose shadow other hero tales must stand and sometimes, admittedly, suffer. But to be ignorant of all his work? Or believe that readers would be hoodwinked and not feel the pulse of common blood, which riots through all the warriors who inhabit the world of sword and sorcery? No. My motive for giving birth to Brak and his parallel universe on an old black iron Underwood was much simpler. There just are not enough stories of this kind to go around anymore. Not enough, anyway, to please me. To help fill this dismal gap, well or badly, I hope never indifferently, my Barbarian, with his long yellow braid and the light of southern horizons glittering in his eyes, was born. As far as author apologies go for their work, that's about as good as it gets. I will definitely take that. I don't think it's good enough to make me read any more of the sword and sorcery barbarian fiction that John Jakes turned out by the ream. I don't think so, but who knows. If I were to encounter another one of these books at the Brattle Bookshop for $1, I would probably get it. I don't know if that's going to happen. But that's your GarbAugust update for today, is Brak the Barbarian by John Jakes, the author of The Bastard. John Jakes, who will forever afterwards be known as the author of The Bastard. And you'll notice that this video is 20 minutes long, where I decided to tell you about the book, read you from the book, express my thoughts and opinions on the book. Some of you who've been following GarbAugust might be noticing that a lot of my co-hosts are doing YouTube Shorts, the TikTok-y type thing that lasts a few seconds, for their GarbAugust updates. I left a panic note on our Voxer group chat asking for assurances that no one is expecting me to do that, right? I can't even introduce myself in 10 seconds. So my GarbAugust updates are going to be longer than a few seconds. And we'll see. Who knows what we'll encounter tomorrow. I'm just going to keep charging along, reading garbage for the month of August. Although maybe I've had my fill of sword and sorcery for a bit. Maybe tomorrow's won't be sword and sorcery, and I'll move on to something else. There's plenty of other kinds of garbage. We'll find out together tomorrow. I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.